Tenju Tejin Joju Sanwi Lajra. That Tewaji then Yukasan Joa. Joa Chileda. That Ranjonga than Shinjonga Lajleda. Chesangata Susan Milule, Zawacham Bukandi image Mura. Tamboso le Ton Rojina. Ani Karchine Chetu Papa Road and Chilida. Nanganzo and Arjia chair bear to Namada. Susu Karina Hakwajda. And then in the Tangazo. 단다 ranjonga de jinjonga la jura ten dewaji de jowa chule ta tamboran jowa karsa chudi karlana ani ni na gosher ranjonga de jinjonga ta pena ranjonga sana mini uchi ambo changla jo leta malu nilate udi.
Yes. Okay. So then, as we already were discussing, in the first verse, the actual first verse, then in the last line it talks about having gained this supreme vessel, a free, well-favored human life. So how do we begin to understand a free, well-favored life? And then it entails an appreciation for what we call the freedoms and the endowments that we are blessed with in this human birth. And before we talk about the freedoms, then we need to understand what are the kind of advantages or endowments that we are blessed with. And then we talk about 10 such advantages that we are blessed with. And they are further divided into personal advantages and circumstantial advantages. And when we are talking about the personal advantages, then they are first having an appreciation. The first advantage is being born as a human being itself is an advantage. And then to be born in a central land. Central in the sense that there is active learning and teaching of the Dharma. This is the meaning of being born in a central land. And then we also need to have an appreciation for the fact that all of our sense faculties are intact. All of our senses are working. We are not born with handicaps and so forth. And then we live a lifestyle that accords with the Dharma. We haven't pursued a lifestyle which disregards the importance of the Dharma. And then Tama di karasongre,
Le Tam Nelative. Nelative Sanje da Chuda Nelative.
And then the fifth one, the final advantage that we have is we have sort of a faith in the Buddha as a teacher, his teachings as the Dharma, and the spiritual community.
Tadinde indigala tangazo mini uchi le di tambura chinangin zamligala simje kazili tangazo tangle deba ra chi shimi tenso ganzo tandan bi thon de jo ani bu chunji de pambo tangazo ma thonji ma kaziyo ra ani soda de na simje ta menta ma shudo tangazo de na ro le tangazo simji sembi bachi la yang mi lu ne tawa mini le chewa le digala ra te mi na chu de chi chodo chu bada chi simje shembale su chu du na re kharlega kharche tu na simje shembale ganzo le badi ya ra chisa mini le chewa de koran denda chikche ra ranjonga yana.
So the first of these 5 personal advantages is being born as a human being, and we need to have an appreciation for that too, because when we look around with our own eyes, we see many different animals who are coerced into submission to do many things that they wouldn't really choose to do themselves. And then think about all these infinite organisms in the ocean and so forth. And when we look at all these kind of infinite sentient beings, we are sentient beings, and they are also sentient beings. But then when we look at human beings, then human beings are blessed with what we call supreme intelligence, to kind of think for themselves. But animals and all these other organisms, they really do not have that kind of intelligence to pursue contemplation, to pursue spirituality only human beings are blessed with such an intelligence.
다 지상한테 미인들가 야부지 제 삼나라 수수 제가 좀라 다 칼미버요. 로비도바다 참여요. 아니 다 티간에 미치 제와산제 리버메인 바라. 티간라 가서 나간저 유우스죠. 그래서 유우도 지치어 다서 유다 수수 라마다 되게 다서 유메와이나. 라 미치 제와이네 베더니 주준이 시서지 디바잖아. 지딘이잖아요. 미치 제와산지 팽입니다. 라 근데 이제는 유우를 제와라데 시당이 지금 당한저 남배 출르시는 나셔다서다 치루카드 가이네 수수지 한다지 춘양스내서 유를 제와들라 유를 제와를 션디다.
So then the first is being a human being, the first of these 5 advantages. Now it doesn't suffice to be born as a human being. And now when we are still talking about the appreciation for being born as a human being, then it is important to realize that we need to put this supreme intelligence to good use. And now moving on, being born as a human being is not enough. Now, if you are born in a land where you are constantly caught up in wars, conflicts, and so forth, then you really do not have the opportunity to think about spirituality and so forth. And this is what we mean by being born in a central land. From a strictly Buddhist perspective, we would say that central land is a land wherein the teachings survive. There are active teachings being given. But now from a secular point of view, then if there is religious, spiritual traditions surviving in your land, then that in itself can be understood as being born in a central land.
다야 미바인바이네 유우스제와이나 팽맛 단도야 같이 엄마만상라 안주 틸레든 통도 라 같이지 안종마고야 같이 미기마도야 같이 감발라마메 지금 로마도야 근데 이 강에만 보진 않고 통도라 제가 근데 인디야 근데 이 렌시 꾸바 근데 제로서는 야 최최고선 지도 말아 거기 미치에르데 팽고 말아 유 우스제나 팽고 말아 근데 엄마만상은 그 안조로지 기체마고는 마토나 때부터만 안조마고 춘예도 말아 라 근데 인자 근데야만 이베야 먼저 양 칼로 안보 연수도 참고해야 되잖아요.
And then now, just being as a human being, just being born as a human being, and born in a central land is not enough for us to effectively pursue spiritual practices. If you are born deaf, mute, and blind, then it presents a lot of challenges in your pursuit of spirituality. But we are not like that. All of our senses are intact. So we need to have an appreciation for that too, and see that as an advantage.
근데 제가 통도 실론도도 같이 이제 미기 마토는 알아. 같이 랑갈 홍되니 엄부 마찬가지. 그저 주제에도 선을 거대 니만 지게 할라디 말하는 강이라. 안 건다한데 되오네 다리카르 사오네. 근데 이딴장 생대갈 되고 책이라. 와.
So we need to understand this by relating it to our own experiences. I'm sure we have all run into people who are blind, deaf, and physically challenged in that manner. And then we see many of these people on the street and begging for alms and support. And think about them. Can they really take the time out to pursue spirituality? They have more pressing matters at hand. They have to earn a living. They have to earn a meal for a day. They do not have the time to kind of pursue spirituality. But we are not like that. All our senses are intact. So it gives us this opportunity to pursue the Dharma.
살레타 말로발라데 지기 간쪽 지레타 말로발라 추게 남샤지 시니라 지게 가시는 레게 타로도 로니스데 간데질라 샤워라나다 가두이는 베스면도 땅 세데데로다 아니 지 게디기 남자 레닌지비 시럽치미죠 라 아니 지 가두이는 레 디버쇼라 짱냐 세데니들래 레다 로버로 쉐거라 가시 베나 산다나지 수수 파마야 세트니 되려 파마다 집부센다 다가데 되게 레가 직세대로 두대로 미망불 속제대로 되게 치서네 미제나 페마사 암보창나야 페마사 아니 유수제나 페마사 먼저야 되네 마이베 수수이 칼로다 예디기 남자 지통이 로치제.
So then, now being even with our senses intact, it doesn't help if we pursue a lifestyle that completely disregards all ethical considerations. If we live a lifestyle wherein we do not care about if our actions have a negative effect on other people and so forth, then we cannot really effectively pursue spirituality. And so this is the fourth advantage that we have. We live a life which does not stand in complete contradiction with the teachings. And from a strictly Buddhist perspective, when we're talking about a lifestyle which is not harmful or wrong, then it pertains to that lack of discrimination between what is virtuous and what is non-virtuous actions. So we have some sort of ethical considerations about what we do. So that's why we are at an advantage to pursue the study and practice of the Dharma.
다 내일 테이블에 내가 나주도는 산제를 테이블로 고르와 산지축인데 다이네 단다 내가 무슨 내일 테이블에 소소지 타바다 산지는 나가 로투세 유치래 테이블 근데질 샤나디기도 간지 지게 수가 레니게 남자마 뜬 퉁기기 유 근데질에 가서 봐 퉁기기 로요 봐 맞잖아.
So then the fifth personal advantage is having faith. Now, from a Buddhist perspective, we would say that one has faith in the Buddha as a teacher and his teachings as the Dharma. And but now, from a secular point of view, maybe we can understand having faith in that basic faith that we have in humanity, and that basic faith that we have in the power of spiritual traditions. And particular spiritual teachers that you follow. So these are the 5 personal advantages or 5 personal endowments.
제신이 저올은 지지지래 다단다 가르라나 당서 딘데위 신종가데 가르라나 사제 지된도 시험 받아 레르라나라 디 추송 받아 아니 가서 템번네 봐 정도 많이 템번네 봐 디 지진 주바 디 지진 주바 정도 많이 봐 아니 딘데 사제기 추데 투저 쳔베고네 지신이 계속 저면 추데 마디네 데히레데 지는 용거라.
And now moving on, the other 5 advantages are what we call our circumstantial advantages. And these 5 circumstantial advantages are a Buddha has come to this world, he has taught the Dharma, and the Dharma survives to this day, and they are followers of the Buddha's teachings, and there are favorable conditions for Dharma practice in this world. That's all.
제정다 산제 지대도 셴바라 봐. 제정 산제 지대도 셴바 인자 아니 가지고 단다징한다 나치 녀야로 되는데 요라. 제지 산제도 셴메 바인다 디진라라 레원네. 봐. 수수 가지고 참마 안보 참마 참 식단다가 미제와다 안보 참마 유네라 체와 아니 레타 말로 내를 대바 차선 사이네. 이게 산제 슈메와이나 다 산제 딘지네 가는 셴메 단다 슈르요 말이데. 산제기 셴바라 때네 산제기 추송바다 단나 냠네 체라. 단다서 다제던 베기다 지지 주거로 단데 코라기 순셰비 순로다 아니 데네 마자가 케바다 자셰 단다가서 달레탄도 다해라. 뭐 된지지.
So then even if we have all these personal advantages such as being born as a human being, all our sense faculties intact, and so forth, but if the Buddha himself has not come into this world and has not imparted these teachings to us, then we really do not have anything to practice or anything to kind of contemplate on. So this is why the first of the 5 circumstantial advantages is an appreciation for the fact that a Buddha, a historical Buddha, has come into this world.
Sanjay Jidi Dishunsa Digala, Sanjay Suru, the name of Rimbachin, Lama Potalera, the name of Parichin, the Tangan Chijure, Kesi, and Sanjay Shamba Sanjay, Sanjay Chumasun, Shu de Oena, not the Yamachi Samira. Just Sanjay to Chochabugan, any day, and Chiki Chumambu sooner, Tambachana, Chusun, Sanjay Sani, and nature or Nasina, and Konga Desambu Shusun, the Baji Chula Sobara, that they may be Jai Shumambu, the Chusun and the Shure. Just the day Chuma was soon do Galani, Jelata, Sanjay Sunchu Sunsha, Samasuka, the Ruchi, and the shit, Tata Yamichi did deliver.
So then, just because a Buddha has come into this world does not guarantee that we will be able to have access to these teachings in this day and age. And from another point of view, even if a Buddha had indeed come into this world, if he did not go to the trouble of giving teachings and just kind of didn't go to the trouble of giving these teachings, then we wouldn't have any kind of idea about what the Dharma really is. So the second of the 5 circumstantial advantages is that a Buddha has actually gone to the trouble to give these teachings. So when we look at the historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha, then he gave the first teaching in Varanasi to his first 5 disciples about the 4 Noble Truths, and from there on he went on to give a series of teachings in many different places in India and the Indian subcontinent. And it is through these teachings that the Dharma survives to this day. The later Indian masters took the trouble to study and write commentaries on this, and then many different later Tibetan as well as other masters took the trouble to translate them and preserve these teachings.
Ni temba ne dala de temba de la lungu temba to tobe temba ni shara ta lungu temba le sanjay ki ma sun sha ji lungu temba tobe temba le de sanjay ki sun sha ji de la nyamne che ne ani su ra ji lo to pa cha ba tu tanda ba tanda ye de ye shan ba ro su tanda ga to thong go ma ne nyam to to pa be de kong de pe ne so so wi chi che chi le so ba ra ye tanda ga to ma bu je ra tu zo kar la na sanjay ki sun sha ji chu de nyamne che ne ani koran de la chi shan ji je shan chu gu sem da ani Lam la rumba suma chike rajula che labnu che tinde chine tanda nga to thongsin ba mambu yorra.
So then the third of this circumstantial advantages is that the teachings have survived to this day. And now when we are talking about teachings, then it is generally understood as the kind of textual source teaching. We kind of only think about that. But this is one of the 2 types of teachings that survives. One teaching is the sutra teachings, the one that we are talking about, classical textual sources that survive to this day. And the other is the teachings of realizations, more experiential, through transmissions, lineages of transmissions. And all of these, we are very blessed that all of this survives even to this day, because there are many exemplary masters who have received this 2 types of teachings through an unbroken lineage from centuries.
Tanda che de Geshema Mabere, Mobile Chewanjoana Ra, O Dindishin Tanda, Chidensa Kala in a reta, Chigi Pula in a car, in a jar in a Mambujur, Chinan Tisanata, Shiji Dukan in a Labnuchinida, Nabeshula, Lajuchin Mambujin, the Jinjubalatita, the Sajoni de Sunja, the Yamachi, Jinjuchin, till a Jason Juba in a Pendo Yoba, Hakoni, the Manmandudo.
And then the 4th circumstantial advantages is that not only have the teachings survived, but they are followers of the teachings. They are active students of the Dharma who continue to study, contemplate, and meditate on these teachings. So, for example, in Tibet we have the great seeds of learning, and after the Tibetans came into India, we have re-established these great seeds of learning in South India. And then there are many other places in India wherein there are classical institutes, monastic institutes, which preserve these teachings, and which dedicate their whole effort towards the active study and contemplation of these teachings. And not only that, now in this day and age, the Dharma teachings are starting to flourish in places wherein they had never heard of the Dharma before. In many Western countries, people are taking an active interest in the Dharma. So we need to have an appreciation for that too, that they are active interest in the Dharma, and they are actually active followers of the Dharma.
Dene tamadala yenshi ni tsewa la de china ye de phemba na la kara san sanje gi tu tsewa chembo go ne chesun ra yenshi ri ni tsewa sa de chen sunye de yen tsewa ye chi de yen kwa da nge su tu la te chi de ra ta ba ta tan chama sanje ko ma ta la so dende gi min sunwa yin za yin tsewa chi ko du tande de de ne ga la ne ya chue chen ni la ro ba che wa da dende gi ta ra ka lo chi pen ju to na la chue chen ni de la tenje du dende la yin tsewa la chi sha da yin do sto la.
So the last of these 5 circumstantial advantages is that they are favorable conditions for Dharma practice. So when we are talking about this particular advantage, the fact that they are favorable conditions for Dharma practice, then there are 2 interpretations. One is to develop an appreciation for the fact that the Buddha himself envisioned such a thing out of his love and compassion for sentient beings. The purpose of giving these teachings was that when he himself passes beyond this world, then there is something that the followers can study, contemplate, and it comes from the Buddha's love and compassion for these sentient beings. And another way of understanding this favorable conditions for Dharma practice is that in this day and age, human beings have a basic sense of concern and compassion for each other. It is not an age marked by strife and constant conflict only, but there is still human concern, empathy, and sympathy for each other, which facilitates conducive conditions for Dharma practice. For example, there are active sponsors who facilitate the study of the Dharma in this day and age.
Tadende indiga ta da nga zo ranjo nga da jinjo nga yin so ba sang se ju ro ra de yin zan da nga zo so so ha ko da so ka de ji re mi ra nga nga zo ngo ma sing ni nga yo ma ra nga jo yo ma ra nga da ri pa yo ma nga la ko ko yo ma nga la tu zo yo ma de ro so nga zo ma nya ja de ra nga zo le di sang ma cha do so so ngo se sam ta ya de ro sto ra.
So then as we now discuss the 10 personal as well as circumstantial advantages, then it is important to recognize these advantages for ourselves, and because normally we do not have an appreciation for these things. We always sometimes we give in to self-pity and say that I do not have the time, I do not have the required intellect to study these things. But if we have an appreciation for these advantages that we are already blessed with, then we have the basis upon which we can build the confidence to pursue the study, contemplation, and practice of the Dharma.
pa rodu gala wane kye ju gora nga ti chang ani khana di gala sam ta sa shi ju gora wa nga zu de chi cho nga zu cho ye le ke da ro so ti sam nga zu di go ma se ta khana di ngo le and la tu ni US tambo.
So then rather than this course being being just this course being a teaching on the Dharma, just for the sake of the teaching of the Dharma, I would appreciate it if there is active discussion and dialogue between us. And because I feel it is very important to kind of continue to contemplate on these things when you go away from here. And for you to carry on this contemplation, you need something that you carry from, you take away from this courses, from this course. So, as a way to open up discussion, I want to ask you now, as we already discussed the 10 advantages, then is there anybody in the group who could list them out? What are these 10 advantages? Maybe it's good to note down these things because they can help you to contemplate later on.
Yeah,
I can do the first 5 if someone else does the second 5.
당분간도 그런 라고스.
네.
미신박이 치망하든 나는 릭사레스. 그래서
So being born as a human is the first personal advantage. Being born in a central land where there's access to Dharma. Having all sense faculties intact. Living a life that is open and receptive to Dharma, an ethical life. And faith in the Buddhist teachings and the Sangha.
다가랑 딱 달랐어. 미제와 유수제와 홍보차상와 아니 레마 다와기지는데 많이 봐. 아니 타마디 대바요. 대바다 이시요.
Very good. Shibaya.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, good.
The circumstantial advantages. First is the Buddha has come to this world. Second, that he made the effort to teach the Dharma. Third is that the Dharma survived to this present time. And the fourth is that there are active followers of the Dharma. And the fifth is there are favorable conditions for practicing the Dharma.
딱 달랐어. 당보 산지 잠기 지근들라 좀봐. 아니 최송화. 아니 최단다야 요봐. 아니 진주 단다야 요봐. 아니 티 어디티.
그래. 근데 팀이지도 이제 티라 파티. 아니 이거는 내가 산다서 시지고. 너도 되는 말 시주 창만 야두고 말아. 네 수수기 맞았다. 홀로 인질 포인트로 레이므라. 년가딘 주어라. 그래. 랩도 가리나 가서 겔라이 펜즈는 나가서 주주지 겔라이 수주 상만 가서 주두고다. 네 나로라 도도도도. 그래. 그래서 저한테 산다서 이 시지라이나. 온디 당한테 저한테 마셔 러주치네 랩턴 털런도 인자인기라. 근데 시지고다. 그래. 이만한테 러주 동무 지대하고 막 얘기 무슨 상만 되게요. 다들 수술로다 하 먹어야 되는데 차리. 근데 많이 봐. 그럼 안 도도지 수술 상다서 있었지. 다디 주사들아 산 아니 니마니마 산다. 뒤에 가서 계셔버다.
So that's very good. And for those of us who didn't take down notes at all, then I would advise you to try to take notes down. And when we say it's important to take notes down, it is because you need something to contemplate on if you want to build a contemplative practice. And if you do not have anything to contemplate on, then it's a futile exercise. So it's important to kind of note down the important things that we are talking about. In English, you would say like noting down the main points. So try to note down the main points. And I'm sure, like as all of you have studied through colleges and schools, you know the importance of taking notes in class. And when we were kids, we didn't know how to approach note-taking as an activity. We used to just note down everything the teacher used to say. And then when we actually try to study on our own, it's impossible to figure out what is the important things. So I would advise you to try to take active notes in the sessions of the important topics, the main points.
다디 상이나 다수도 있는 nga shibuji nga ji nga ji sai chi cha yo ro nga smi shen da ma da nga shibuji chang yi le bela nga ji je no thonju chi sai ji cha na di go ma di nga za bi ha ko bi go ni ani ji chue le shu ye ro ra su su mi su na la shang ni ji shang ju sen nya le che ya do shen be ge lia ga che ya do dan thang mo da ja ka do na thang mo da se se do ra ta ma nga zo lang ga le do yin chi mi sen su so cha ba do so ba ta su su ga du ji do ni nga zo shoge ne go da ba do ka do yin ro ba le ki shi ya yin na re ji khala sa yin de go ta khan da nga zo chue chi ji na le ha pe ma zo la ba yo ra chue che le lo ga chi pe shu do go ye chi yo ma ra ji ne ta nga zo go ba le chen de le ye de chue le de su su ka do yin shoge ne go da ba di semju ka do de sembe de ye sa no ko shu khan de do ani su su lu nga gi cha ju kan tel ta ji chi ji ra ani chi phen ba da ji ge we gi le ga ji ne che o di ba re ya bu mu du sam pang 근데 저는 다른 취체고 가시가 취체를 뒤좀 뒤질래네 배리 감라 최고예요.
Okay, so then as we now come to the realization that we are indeed at an advantage because we have all these advantages that the text talks about, then we should not develop a sense of arrogance of the fact that we have these advantages. Now, it is important to recognize that we are indeed blessed with these advantages, and now to dedicate these capabilities and these advantages that we are blessed with towards the pursuit of spirituality, towards the pursuit of the Dharma as a Dharma practice. So this is the point of recognizing these advantages. Just because you come to recognize these advantages doesn't mean that you will immediately pursue a spiritual path. Now you have to put in the effort to pursue a spiritual path or what we call a Dharma practice. And so then if we actively try to cultivate a practice, then we have no way to develop a sense of arrogance about these advantages. And then the question arises, now what do we really mean by engaging in Dharma practice or a spiritual practice? And then we traditionally or normally have this image that when we think about spiritual practice and Dharma practice, then we think that the setup is like a monastery, a quiet place, and so forth. And then we equate retreats with spiritual practice and so forth. When in a sense, throughout the day, we are presented with endless opportunity to practice the Dharma. And as we already discussed, Dharma practice is a process of transformation of the mind. So we have endless opportunities to look at the mind throughout the day and how the projections of the mind manifest themselves in our behavior, in our actions, in our speech, and so forth. So this is what Dharma practice really is. We become more mindful of how we speak, how we act. And this is Dharma practice. So when you look at Dharma practice like that, then throughout the day, there are endless opportunity for you to practice the Dharma, rather than always going for a retreat in a monastery or so forth. Question?
So in cases of people that don't have these 10 advantages, maybe people that don't have have some mental or physical disabilities, or they are born in countries where maybe the Dharma is not so present with Dharma centers, the explanation to that would be like karma, like maybe lack of affinity with Dharma in previous lives, or maybe like.
Dini Kurang Tiyo dir tandanganzo jowa chulara. Dinala ni kisi dindegi chajin di miji la tsamenas, bina chajin na miji mombo chunji la soba. Dindi ani je leba tamo mejo. Dindi je ani yu la maji jora. Ani chu mataya sacha dindi la che de nasra. Ting Anzuki any Nansudon and Dishakan Jagiresra. Kola the Chegwe Jumzinso, the Le Rangla Showers. Colegi Chingani, Chuta Teo Mari, the Degi Wambol Chun Charlati, Le Rangla Tukuras.
당아서 나베기 추토는 actually 야포지 주네레 두제지 주네레 레레라 레디에 상제도 단 지금만 막고셔 좀 많이 봐 알았어 너 지상한쪽에 밀레다 소소 강의지 중중에 연락해서 요만 그냥 한말 소소도 쓰셔줘 그라 라니기 사비레 라니 되고 용거를 마도 그 신바지기 사 신바지를 때도 요 지상한쪽 야도 가르쳐 주면이나 먼저 알아서 쓰셔줘 단단 알아서 간대지 제시에는 그냥 한말 알아서 쓰셔줘 그라 알아서 클래스하셔 마음 다들랑즈나 담 같이 심마 간다 단대기 생각되어서 하마 강원 단대 류려되어서 그라 세상 이 남배기 돌려셔야는 참아 레기 나야
So yes, from a Buddhist perspective, then we talk about karma or action, how every action has a consequence, and then every action has a consequence, and then this is exactly what karma is, and it is not something that karma is not something that is imposed by some enlightened being upon us. Karma is the consequences of our actions that we kind of experience or suffer through, and this we cannot blame on any outside condition. This comes from our own actions in previous lives. So from the Buddhist perspective, all of our experiences of joy, suffering, and so forth comes from our own action or comes from our own karma. And for example, in Tibetan we have a saying that if you want to know what you would look like or where you would go in your next life, then look at your mind now. And if you want to know like what you did in your previous life, then look at your body in this present life. So it's to stress the importance of an acceptance of personal responsibility over our own actions, and that all our actions have consequences. If they do not manifest themselves in this life, for sure it will manifest themselves in some other lifetime.
지상한조 지단 내가 가르치는 아주 나라서 통신 받아야 되리다 수수기 지지도 가 tunde 야보지 용고선 수술로 야보지 genza 야보니 아니 뒤서 따따따따 라조도 야보치나 야 제야브라이다 다게 마산 파자 자두가 야보지 맞잖아 데부터금다 따뜻뜻이나 총바이나래 총바이 총바이 밀은 저와처럼 총자당 깔레자당 주님만이만 따따래가잖아 그런 데부야부터다 이마지길래 총로제 이마지 다가서 저지 땅 빼서 버렸거든 그래야 데부야부터입니다 내가 알아서 무슨 통신 받으라 봐 따뜻뜻 대송이 가시야 세대를 깔레제 재미를 보나 기부여도 내가 또 통해요 다이네 가시길래 미치기 야보 쇼체네 콜레티 버를 바지 마고 쇼도네 내딜레 레레라리오다 경험스 레ኝ바 사이다 잠자 란도 마주에 된데 리다 봐 저런 야보 치고서는 깔레제는 디 데부타다 마미에 된데 용구다 다나 디 레데타타 레무다 그 깔레제만 하신 데부 투기임다는 연디야 경험하기 레레 때네 수술에 딱 바지 공부하기 레사라 오딘데로 봐
So then, yes, all of these kind of setbacks or like joys that we experience is a manifestation of our karma. And when we try to understand karma, then we kind of try to understand karma through what we see with our own eyes. This is the kind of initial reaction we have towards the process of understanding karma. And then when we look at something that happens in a person's life, then for example, if you have to appear for an exam, then you have to put in the effort to actually study on your own and then to appear for the exam. The result of the exam is determined by how much effort you put into your study. And if you do not care about putting in the effort to study, then how can you begin to expect a good result in examination? Similarly, if you are a business person, then as you go on a business trip, if you do not focus your attention on the business at hand and begin to become distracted by like other things, then how can you begin to expect a good thing to come out from the business trip? So these are very gross and very tangible examples of karma that we can see with our eyes. And let's talk about a lifespan of a person. If someone really puts in the effort to achieve something when he is young, then he can enjoy the rewards in his old age. And this is very gross and easily evident examples of karma. But then people begin to develop questions about karma when they say that even if someone puts in all these effort and takes care of everything in his control, still some people do not see the desired result that they want. Then this is also karma at play. And because when we talk about karma, we do not talk about karma only in one lifespan. We talk about karma from beginningless time. So there are many karma or karmic imprints from previous lives that are still yet to manifest. And it just happened to be the case that in this life, despite your best efforts, sometimes you do not see the result because of some previous karma. Questions?
To me, it sounds a bit unfair that is as if it's so if someone has less advantage from birth, it's their own fault, or it's due to their previous actions. But it visually sounds very unfair.
Unfair in the sense?
As in, we don't choose where we are born and how we are, which advantage we have from birth. And the Buddhist justification is that this is due to previous actions or previous karma. But I struggle with this idea because I think
the dilatits kanyichigidus kelera. Penachashana mazoida mijik wongbo junjiro jenasra. Kogi ngang wongbo juji giging and damgajiyo maras. Ko wongbo jujila jingras. And it ko ditsangma chirangi le ki chenere lamna. Yala ganga ko gana yujoda chasa. Di changboe mejoda sorgidus. And dila yendu zamba nangshugida din dagarang shigyoras. Shugi legi chenji da chirang jiwa de lechi lebe. Wongbo nedang de lechi la jiwa de shidu zamba di changbo mejoda otongudus.
네. 디레 단다 지단게 저 하마이 수수게 랭게 바지 사올 때네 지진의 코나 저 하마데 심쟁게 강발라바 두데니로 자데니로 지도 아프 가시는도 진부도 세야 되는 거도 근데 저와도 인스라 봐 지나 디가서 파 미션바지를 직강이 태우테되는 수술은 되고녀다 지나가서 렌데게 나시는데 통전용주기 레래 아제네 용주다 렌다존 용주레 네 뭐베 봐 나다 남이래 디가라 가도 미칠 판데 받는 지는 되게 남이 다랑 수술은 준 거야. 되래요. 네. 수술로 테마데도 공부해 마이 뭐보이 이러면서 지당이 시나 엔데라.
So then, from the Buddhist perspective, that is exactly the perspective through which we explain someone being born as a handicapped or so on and so forth. Now this comes from the fact that Buddhists do not look at life only this life. We talk about beginningless time. We have taken a lot of births. And then in a previous birth, it might be the case that this person who is born at a disadvantage in this life has inflicted injury on others by breaking their limbs, killing them, and so forth. So this karma that they have accumulated in a previous life has to manifest in some way or another way in one of the lifetimes. So it happens that it manifested in this manner in this life at birth. And when we are talking about karma, then we talk about different types of karma. A karma that is easily like evident, a karma that is congruent with the experience, a karma that is congruent with the action itself, and so forth. So yeah, there is a very detailed kind of process through which we approach karma. And yes, But from the Buddhist perspective, it is explained like that. And now, even if from my side, I think that's a question I had too. Like, if you begin to blame everything on karma, then like everything seems predetermined, one, and then you blame everything on like something that is outside of your control all the time. But then I realized later on that is a wrong reading into how karma works. If karma is is your action and its consequence, then you always have an active role in how you accumulate the causes and conditions for your actions to manifest. So then, in the case of someone being born as a handicapped, then when from the Buddhist perspective, when you say that it is because of your karma, it is not to say that you were a bad person in previous life, so you were born like this. It is to say that you need to come to accept this situation faster. The better, the faster you accept this situation as it is, the better it is for you to kind of grow out of it. This is the Buddhist kind of approach, I think, because Buddhist approach is always an acceptance of reality as it is, wherein, like, even if you coddle the child as a baby and give him all these kind of advantages that no other people have, but if he himself does not make peace with his situation, then it's tough for him to kind of break out of that. So that's my 2 cents regarding the situation.
이네 잠잠한테 제나지만이나 레 두어디긴 데부 메시그라 아주 인gel란 마도고야다 예선요 아무 마찬가 차이 인가야다 아주 베도거래 슈빙란 템부요라.
So then yes, exactly. So when we are talking about someone who is born with a physical disadvantage, then it is karma manifesting itself, but that karma would run its course when he passes away from this world. And then he will be born as, it might be the case that he might be born as someone who is blessed with unimaginable advantages in the next life. Then right now, when we look at ourselves, we are blessed with all these opportunities and advantages. But it might be the case that this karma that we have accumulated to be born as in this form runs its course in this life. And then in your next life, we are born as someone with a physical or mental disadvantage.
세상에서 단들레 숨샤라 디도 히도에 말아 배는 통존연주기 레라나 가시 쳇도래 하고잖아 세밀은 저 메데니도 그렇지 통존에 가르션 콜베 랑도에 메 심바상보레 메 하고잖아 세미바도 베 하고 되기다 하시는데 가시 다 세들레 메마도 소들레 아부치네 단도 두자지 우디네 저 한마기도마 디치고르 마지 가시 디 고통도다 아 코미페 아보레 치치고르 딱버시 아부치고데 콜레 야부 용음들레다 야부 마요한테 짱 한번 되게 되고저라 저 가서 저신 용지디기 레디기 사 되고저라 제가 빼는 가서 단다 야부 치네 딜레 야부 메마도네 저 슈마레메 라 디가는 렌데 신은 다 제네 쇼지 단다 가서 레 야부 사인 주마지만 메 토요드네 뭐 라 제가 레레디 인지미 단다라서나 단다라 메 비차바요 제가 레 가서 다 마사샤레 디가레 사변을 스네탑디 디치바라레도다 근데 이상한도 레 담레레 디갈다 한도 야보치마도네 야만도야니가라.
So then now to give you a rough idea about like way karma manifests itself, then there are 3 types of karma which manifest themselves and broadly, and one is easily evident with our own eyes in this lifetime, that someone like does something really bad when in this lifetime, and then begin to suffer the consequences in this lifetime itself. Another type of karma is, even if they do something bad in this life, it doesn't manifest itself in this lifetime. It manifests itself in the next lifetime. And then and the other karma that it manifests itself like hundreds of lifetimes later for that karmic imprint to ripen. So all of this depends on the kind of potency of the karma that we, the powerful, whether the karma that we accumulate is powerful or not.
지단이 돈 라인데 송다 진다와이 레제바 데부던데 니디 수라 레칸데 산데우디 뉴블라네 도카는 나글로 샤레 다디 마이베 가서 돈단 잔nen데 로와이나 렌데기 나 슈시라이 공이망이 마디체레 데부던데 좀 나도 렌데다 나도 친구가 레레레 이치마치에 가데이나 하고마라 세상 돈 잔nen데 로 안데 드네시디가 아니 아니모네 소소 인사를 소소치리기도 와 단대기 들 때기 인지민이 가서 디 강하게 칼로 모데 집어 쳐는 도고에 쳐봐요 와 모데 쳐는 가서 인지민이 쫄렌데 켈랭 골렌 도고에 뭐 소소 데바레 켈랭만에 이네 소소 디가 렌데가 시에 데바이나 돈 잔nen데 로 드네치
So the Buddhist sutra themselves say that whatever karma you accumulate, corresponding results you will experience. And then also there are many examples of how karma manifests itself in our lives as well as in different lifetimes in the sutras. And now when we are talking about karma, even as a Buddhist, we are not advised to develop a sense of faith in karma. We are first taught to investigate if karma really works, and then to develop a conviction in that fact. And that's the basis upon which you understand karma, through that conviction. And similarly for you, there's no need to develop a sense of blind faith in karma. And there is no need for you to accept karma. What you need to do is to approach it with an open mind and see if it really accords with the nature of reality. Choice.
I have a question regarding the potency of the karma. So you said dependent of the potency, in which lifetime it develops, so to say. Can this potency be specified a little bit? Is it the heaviness of the action? Is it maybe killing? Is the heaviest potency? Is it like that?
le top chema che chung la ju ras le to che chung le di ani joa gi mun top chewa kulon ji mun top chewa la di la gi ras di theory
네 어떠셔라 지단게 지기 소체바이나 종어 주순 참아서 라리오라 아니 아직 파마세 왔던데네 디바 신이 들어서 남마다 상제로 오다다 지상 주선 받는데 안에 지금 내 버쳐와이나 디바 쳇체 땡 따고 땡 거랑 지연데 첨보다 까디시 보이서 든데질라처럼 내 버쳐는 야마이지다 양 찍네 쇼건조 좋아다 무슨 죽 참아서 같이 제가 장시가 맞네 디바 총 근데 쳐봐요.
So yes, this is exactly what we mean by the potency of the karma. And for example, we need to understand that when we are talking about accumulating karma from an action, let's in this case stick to a non-virtuous action, and let's talk about the act of killing. And then we talk about how for the complete karma to be accumulated, it needs to fulfill the 4 requirements of the basis, intention, action and completion. So if any of these are not complete, then the karma is less potent. This is one way of understanding it, the potency of karma. And now another way of understanding the potency of karma is generally, because of the action itself. Killing is much more powerful than lying, per se. And then it also depends on who you lie to, who you kill, and so forth. So these are the manner in which we decide the potency of the karma that we accumulate.
그래서 렌델레데 넘버 집은 말에 켈레니 뭐라
여러 자가 켈레
힌두 토라 페지 근데 다 같이 상황에 렌데 켈레 거라
같이 나 심시디 힌두 켈레
다 같이 게다 주루 나로래 렌데 켈레니 뭐 보여라 켈레 뭐이네 다 저런 나바 있나는 마인데 간데 켈레와는 이 나랑 삼발 계산 가르 두트나 레데데 켈레와나 나디 치는 거 얄라도라 나디 치는 거 지우데 디바모 가람 아무 마상 알아서 제기르선 지나지리다 디기 저런 레 두자 마소에라 편도도 라 치 렌데로 케마네는 오 다리디 치우 주는 중어를 두 주는 중어를 그러나 마음바 레와다 시나다 겨구지 요말 디디가 아니 그냥 담을 제행이가 그막고야 임스야 또야 세디 계산 가르는 제행이가 라 자 심한들 시서 유디가 대지 레데켈레와이나 디게 가서 신하게 내가 누워 맞아야라 팽이다 라
So then it is not only Buddhism who accepts karma or law or the law of causality. Even in Hindu, they have a very detailed presentation about the law of causality, and I'm sure there are other ancient traditions which talk about karma. And now, from my perspective, the advantage of being convinced of the fact of causality is that when you begin to accept causality as a fact, then your actions are informed by that conviction, because you understand that all of your actions have a consequence, and then you are more mindful about your actions. Whereas if you completely disregard causality, then whatever you do, like, it doesn't really have a repercussion at all. So this is the kind of advantage of developing a conviction in causality as a fact, that you have more ethical restraint rather than having to depend on fear imposed by man-made laws.
지시 기지 렌데 케마네 와이나 밀바 투주 제투 거리는 지기라 그 렌데네 말 다리들 투는 투르사요 투주 제와이나 아니 비기 밀을 수저라 다차지 이거 다타 두서는 비기 밀 세잉이야 라 세와이나 저런 아니 예 정한 로고에로 저런 소도 다양로 되게니 봐 라. 되게 아니 저런 담아드는 예와로 로고서 되게 망부지다 그 렌데 케마네나 아리 동보 나도 되게 갈라 맞다 렌데 켈레와이나 두서 무슨거라 순두가라 계산 망부지 쳇들에 계산 망부지다 저런 여 가르사 정할 도모 소도 도모에 시소날 미 가동 단사 아 코미 두제라 마와야 라 아니 지 간다 고 망부지 까기도 지수설에 계산마다 정민도 되게
So then accepting karma doesn't really put you at a disadvantage at all, because it gives you a natural kind of protection against like mindless actions, if you have an acceptance of karma. For example, let's say if you do not accept karma or do not disregard causality as a fact, then it might be the case that you act very mindlessly, and then your actions might inflict harm upon other people, and you wouldn't even bat an eye. But when human made laws come into play, then it might be the case that you have to suffer through imprisonment and so forth. But for a person who has accepted causality as a fact, he or she is more mindful of his actions, of their actions, and it offers like a natural protection against that kind of pitfall.
아니 근데 실례가 샤오라
Okay, then we break for lunch now.